language, but also teaching about the cultures. So first of all, I would like you to look back with me to see that the learning English process has changed with the years. As you can see in the slide, that grammar and vocabulary. Then we pass to the 4 language skill: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. But what happens nowadays? The important things now is to take into consideration the cultural and intercultural components. We could ask ourselves, why should we consider the teaching of a culture as a skill set as a part of language teaching, and also why we consider it as some people do as a 5th language skills? Why culture is important in including in EFL teachings? Well, okay. So we have to bear in mind that English is considered in a lingua franca. What does lingua franca means? Lingua franca is a bridge language, a language that allows communications with people that don't share the same native language. So my point here today is why we need, or why it's important, we need to teach cultures in the context of language teachings. When we talk about the cultures in EFL language teaching, the first questions come into my mind is why is incorporating culture in EFL classroom is inevitably. I think that there are at least 3 fundamental reasons. The first is cultures and language are inseparable. It means that when we teach cultures, when we teach language, it means that we also teach the culture of that language. And the second one is since language and culture are inseparable, language teaching is culture teaching. And the third is the fact that the major goal of a foreign language program is the mastery of communicative competence. So, what is culture actually? Taylor regards culture as the complex whole which include knowledge, belief, art, law, moral, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. According to Moran, culture is the great achievements of people as reflected in their history, social institutions, work of art, architecture, music, and literature. These definitions denote that language is an aspect of cultures because language is basically learned and shared by man as a member of society. In relation to the foreign language learning, this definition simply that when somebody learns a foreign language, he or she participates to some extent in the culture of native speaker of the language being learned. So, how to incorporate cultures into the EFL classroom? One problem in all classroom work is the involvement of students' interests, attentions, and active participations. Learning activity which focus on active rather than passive learning are the best. Traditional methods of teaching culture in the foreign language classroom have been focused on formal culture and passive learning. So I think that in order to communicate effectively in the target language, foreign language students should be facilitated to feel, to touch, smell, and see the foreign peoples and not just hear the language. So it means that when the students learn the foreign language, they need to include the cultures in that process of language learning. So when we talked about that, I take the point about the material and technique for presenting cultures in the classroom. I think that there are so many materials and techniques that can be used to presenting cultures in the classroom, but I only take some of them. The first one is authentic materials. Just like films, new broadcasts, and television show, website, photograph, magazine, newspaper, restaurant, menu, travel brochure, and other printed materials. I think that when we teach English as a foreign language in the classroom, when the teacher uses the authentic materials, it will be help the students to create the culture of the language that they learn. So I think it's better to use authentic material. The second one, it will be the technique is role play. Students can act out a miscommunication that is based on cultural differences. When the students learns the language, they can act just like a culture of the language that they learn. So they can be in the surrounding that the culture of that language used. And the next will be ethnographic studies. Students can carry out the ethnographic interview with the native speaker in the community, where they can record in notebook or on audio tapes or video tapes. The next will be films. I think films is often one of the most current and comprehensive way to encapsulate the look, the feel, and the rhythm of the cultures. So I think there are so many material and technique can be used to present culture in the classroom.
Ms. Oli, I'm sorry to disturbing you. Can you make it into slideshow? There are many of our participants cannot read your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Okay. Back to this one. So I think that it's not in doubt that when we teach language, it meant that we also teach the cultures. So in the conclusions, I state that it was argued that current EFL teaching is indeed culture teaching due to the three reasons. The first is culture and language are inseparables. It means that when we teach language, we also teach cultures, and it will be better learning when we teach the language, also to teach the cultures. And the second one is an EFL teaching is a foreign culture teaching in order to facilitate the students to experience acculturations. And it also a sound grasp of the background knowledge of the target necessary for anyone to communicate successfully with the speaker of the language. So in short that I take the point that when we teach language for the English for the student as a foreign language or teaching English as a foreign language, it means that it will be better if we include the cultures in the process of teaching and learning. So as we know that it will be easier for the students to learn and get the language and also use the language. So I think it's that simple. The key point that I take for this webinar, because actually I think that I will be the third speaker, but it's okay. Maybe Mr. Rakib and Ms. Meme and also Mr. Anwandi will be give more knowledge and experience dealing with the culture diversity and the students learning need in English foreign language. Okay, I think that's all, Ms. Absarini. We'll be back to you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Loli. Thank you, Ms. Loli, for discussing about cultures and teaching language that cannot be separated. It's just like told by Ms. Loli so far, culture and language is inseparable. Okay, so now we invite our speaker from Monash University, Mr. Rakib Kauduri. Can you present it now?
Sure, yes. Can you hear me, Sharini?
Yes. It is clear.
Okay, so everyone, once again, I'm really sorry. There were some technical issues. I'm not sure whether it's because of Zoom or whether it's because of the Monash network. I had to uh, go out and log in once again. So I'm really sorry about that, everyone, but I'm back and things should be fine. Absharini, if you can help me, allow me to share my screen, because you have to, yes, I think I can share it now.
All right.
Okay. Now, can you tell me all if you can see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, is it clear?
You can see.
Is it big enough?
Yes. Can you make it into slideshow, sir?
I could do that. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yes.
And can everyone hear me loud and clear? Just wanted to be sure. Okay. So Absharini, during my presentation, if there are any problems with audio, just let me know. Just interrupt me and let me know, right?
All right. All right, sir.
And how much time do I have? Half an hour?
30 minutes.
Okay, that's all right. So I'd like to start by saying thank you to a number of people. First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Loli for officially inviting me to be a presenter for this webinar. I would also like to thank Absharini, who's been the person behind the scenes, taking care of everything, preparing the poster and all of that. So thank you, Loli. Thank you, Absharini. I would like to acknowledge my co-presenters, Dr. Melanie and Mr. Irwandi as well. Very glad to be with Dr. Melanie and Mr. Irwandi. So really, really happy to be here. And I'd also like to acknowledge Gusti. I don't know if Gusti is here, but he was the one who contacted me about a month ago, and he wanted to see whether I could supervise him at Monash University. So that is Gusti is my connection with IAIN Bukittinggi. So very glad to be here. I'll get it started. The topic that we have is cultural diversity and students' learning needs in EFL, which is English as a foreign language. I will ask some questions. I would expect you to feel free to answer the questions when I ask the questions. I'll show you some images. The other thing is the presentation is ideal for 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes. But Absharini has given me only half an hour, so I'll probably be speaking a bit faster. If I'm speaking too fast, please let me know. I will slow down, all right? Okay, if I'm going too fast, just let me know, I'll slow down. All right, let's start with, yeah. So this is the first slide. As you can see, we need to make a very important distinction between EFL and ESL. Those of you in English education, you know that these stand for English as a foreign language, and ESL is English as a second language. The same student can be EFL or ESL, depending on where he or she is. So an Indonesian student who is learning English in Indonesia is EFL. But the same student, when they come to Australia, which is an English-speaking country, he or she would become an ESL student, English as a second language, because English is the main language in Australia. In Australia, we don't say ESL, we say EAL, which stands for English as an additional language. And that recognizes that some students learn English not as a second language, but sometimes as a third or a fourth language. Now, for English teachers, it's very important to understand the difference between EFL and ESL. And we will look at some examples. The most obvious difference in terms of our teaching is that in EFL, most students have the same first language. So for example, in Indonesia, an EFL student, his or her first language will be Bahasa Indonesia. So that's the common language. So for a teacher, it is easier to explain a lot of things because they have a common shared language, first language, Bahasa. But when the same Indonesian student comes to Australia and becomes an ESL student, he or she would be in a class where there are other international students from other languages. And in that case, it is difficult for the teacher to use that common shared language because the teacher in Australia might not even know the first language of the learners. So we can have Vietnamese students, Indonesian students, Thai students, Japanese students. So that is why EFL and ESL are very different in terms of instruction, in terms of how we teach in the classroom. And I will also talk about some of the differences that are inherent in EFL classes. So I'm talking about English classes in Indonesia. So let me quickly introduce myself, guys. So this is me. As you can see, I have studied English and English literature, but then I switched over to education. I did my second master's in TESOL, and then I did a PhD in education as well. So the first 2 degrees are from the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh. That is where I am from originally. And the second 2 degrees are from Monash University, where I still am. I've been teaching for about 23, 24 years now. I've been at Monash since 2000. So this is my 20th year at Monash University in Melbourne. And over the period of time, I have changed my focus of research from one to the other. So I started with English literature, then I moved on to TESOL, and now I am more interested in policy reform, policy studies, social justice in education, bilingualism. So these are the epistemological shifts that I have had over the last 22, 23 years. Interestingly, I have supervised 5 PhD students from Indonesia so far. The total number of PhD students I've supervised is around maybe 13, 14, 15. So almost 1/3 of them are from Indonesia, and 4 of them, they've already finished. So I have Dr. Afrianto from Riau University. That's in Sumatra. I have Dr. Heni Herawati from Sanata Dharma University, Dr. Novi Restiningrum from Yarsi University, Jakarta, and Dr. Maya Waro from Samratulangi University, Manado. We are still in touch. And so these are the 4 that finished. And I'm also supervising Yeni Carlina. She's from Surakarta, Solo. She hasn't finished. So I have a close connection with Indonesia. But most importantly, I'm a great fan of Indonesian history, culture, food, and people. I love all the Indonesian food. I love sambal very much. I love all the spices, all the fruits, all the sweets, the different types of rice dishes, vegetables, all of that. I'm a great fan of Indonesia. And I've been to Indonesia many, many times. I spent almost 1 month on 2 different trips in Indonesia last year. I was in Makassar, Toraja, Palopo, Jogja last year, but I've also been to other places as well. In fact, I was in Bukittinggi 2 years ago with my student, Dr. Afrianto. Jam Gadang is an awesome architectural place to visit. So I'm glad to be here back again, having an indirect touch with Bukittinggi with you guys. So this is why I'm a great fan of Indonesian history, culture, people, and food. It's because of the cultural diversity. 17,000 islands. Think about it. More than 300 languages, more than 600 ethnicities. So it's a great nation full of cultural diversity, which is today's topic. So Minangkabau, as you say in Minangkabau, over the years, I've picked up a few phrases, words of expression. So in Minangkabau, you say adat basandi siara basandi kitabullah, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, and I know what it means. In Makassar, they say, sekali layar terkembang pantang biduk suruk ki pantai. And that is an acknowledgement of getting all the knowledge from outside, the sailors from the past. So that's the Makassaris. And in Toraja, I was in Toraja twice. In Toraja, they say, Misa kada dipotuo pantan kada dipomate, which means united we stand, divided we fall. So why am I mentioning all of these things? These are the local epistemologies that represent the wonderful cultural diversity in Indonesia. More than 600 ethnicities. That is one of the things I love about Indonesia. A lot of this cultural diversity is also reflected in our classes. But my question is, to what extent do we also differentiate our teaching to cater for the different needs of our students? Because a lot of differences are invisible. We can't actually see them. So in spite of all the diversity, it is one country, one motherland, one language, and one ancestry, right? That is the whole notion of Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity in diversity. Okay, so we are talking about cultural diversity in EFL classes. When we talk about cultural diversity, we have to be very careful about homogenization. Homogenization means to see everything as one. So unity is good, but it cannot be good if we think everyone has the same needs. In our case, EFL students in our classes. So we need to be careful about that. So I want to show you this picture. Take a look at it for a moment and tell me what's going on. And then I'll explain what it means to be diverse and what it means to be Ika together. Okay, take a look, see what's happening here. So we can see a classroom, guys, and we can see some animals, right? And the teacher is saying, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So what's happening here? Do you think this is fair for all the students?
No.
No, not
Yes.
at all.
Not at all. Yes, exactly. Why isn't it fair?
Because they have different ability or capability.
Exactly, that's exactly right. They have different abilities. So who has the unfair advantage in this picture?
Maybe elephant.
No,
Or
the elephant can't get up the tree. Someone who can climb the tree.
penguin. Penguin.
It's about
What do you
climbing.
think?
It's about monkey.
I think the monkey, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if the fair selection is to take the same exam, which is to climb the tree, then the monkey has the fair advantage. The seal, the fish, the dog, the elephant, they won't be able. I think someone is sharing screen. It has to be stopped. Otherwise, I can't. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
No.
All right
Because
now.
someone else is sharing. Absharini.
Let me try.
Yeah, someone else is sharing. So mine is lost.
Off?
Can you see my screen now again?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Raya. I can see Raya there.
Hi.
Okay. All the way from.
Semarang.
Yes, Semarang, that's right. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make here, showing this image, is that in the EFL classroom, we often do this. We try to make a fair assessment of our students by assuming that they all have the same needs and the same abilities. So we try to homogenize their needs and we give them the same exam. And when we do that, some students like the monkey, they have an advantage. Some students like the elephant or the fish or the dog, they are disadvantaged. And yet we don't realize that. So we are talking about cultural diversity. Let's think about what it means in the EFL classroom. That brings me to the next point. When we talk about culture, we are talking about two types of cultures. We're talking about the visible or the surface culture, and we're talking about the deep culture, you know, values and epistemologies and ideologies and all of these things that we cannot see. So when I was talking about the Minangkabau and Toraja and Makassaris, I was talking about food and custom and clothes, maybe music, maybe I was talking about what is it called? The Rumah Panggung in Minangkabau compared to Rumah Gadang. Sorry, Rumah Gadang, right?
Yes,
Panggung
that's right.
is in Toraja and the
Toraja.
Tongkonan. So these are the visible artifacts that make us distinguish one culture from another. But there is a whole lot of other things that make us different. And like the iceberg, it is hidden under the water, so we can't see it. So what does that mean? There are two things that we need to be careful about. One is called ethnocentrism and one is called cultural relativism. And these are both the behaviors that are a result of homogenization and cultural superiority. So I'll give you an example. The first one, ethnocentrism, means that human tendency is to compare other cultures through our own culture. So for example, in Indonesia, if you eat with your hands, if you eat rice with your hands, which I do, that is normal. So someone who's eating with chopsticks, you'd say, oh, that's weird. How can you eat rice with sticks? That's very weird. On the other hand, someone from, let's say, China or Thailand who uses chopsticks, they would say using hands is weird. So we have the tendency of judging other cultures by the standards of our own. This is called ethnocentrism. Now, in Indonesia, in a classroom, think about the diversity of the students ethnically, linguistically, behaviorally, and all of that. We have a tendency of being ethnocentric by placing dominant cultures and the curriculum and the assessment as the standard, and anything that is deviated from it, we see it as, you know, abnormal because we are being ethnocentric. So ethnocentrism is not just about comparing one nation with another, it is also comparing, you know, differences within a small classroom, the culture within classrooms as well. Cultural relativism is similar, and that is the notion that everything that a culture accepts as normative, as acceptable, is unquestioned, but we really have to question some of our cultural practices as English language educators, and I'll give you some examples. So this brings us to a very important concept, and this is called social justice, and I've put in some Bahasa terms here. I hope I'm making sense. One is equality and one is equity, and I will show you the difference by showing you some images. So this is the first one. This is equality. Can you see the image, guys? Yes, Absharini, can you see the image? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So equality is treating everyone equally. So in order to see the game, everyone is given one box to stand on, okay? But there is a problem here, right? The problem is that the young person here
Yep.
is not able to see the game because this is not really helping him.
Yep.
The only person who is benefiting is the person in the middle, and because of height advantage, the tall person here doesn't need to stand on a box. So if you treat everyone equally, so equal input results in unequal output. And this is what we do in the classroom. We treat everyone equally, and some people don't benefit from it at all. So this is equality, problematic. So what is equity? This is equity. We remove one of the boxes from the tall person because he doesn't need it, and we give it to the short person because he needs it. So now we have unequal input. So treating people differently, but the output is now equal. Everyone is enjoying it. Okay, so this is called equity, or in Bahasa equitas, and equity is not treating everyone equally, but giving them what they need. What about reality? So this is what happens in reality. People who don't need something, we give them the most, even as English teachers in the classroom. People who need it the most, we bury them, we give them the least, okay? So equity, equality. So social justice is the notion of giving people based on their needs, not based on our perceptions of everyone having the same needs. So this is social justice. So social justice is actually built in Indonesian culture as well, okay? So fairness, being fair, is not treating everyone in the same way. It is not, it is everyone getting what they need, okay? Now, two of my three recent books are actually based on social justice. So if you look at this one is about social justice, and this one is about the result of social justice, which is transformation and empowerment. So in other words, the only way of empowering our learners the only way of giving our learners power to decide for themselves, self-determinism, as it is called, is to treat them according to individual needs, is to differentiate them rather than treating everyone equally. So, you know, on principle, it might sound good that I treat everyone equally. I don't recognize cultural diversity because I think everyone is Indonesian. We have the same Tanah Air and Bangsa and Bahasa, but there are a lot of differences that they doesn't see. So in that class, the monkey and the elephant and the seal and the bird, those are visible differences. But what about invisible differences? And I'll show some examples of that as well. So what does it mean to respond to cultural diversity in EFL? So as I said, you know, in Pancasila, you actually have the notion of social justice already. Someone is sharing the screen up, Sharini. You have to remove that. Someone called Windows 10.
Sorry, sir.
So if you can remove that, I'll get back to my screen. Sharini, can you remove that? Windows 10 has started sharing screen. Okay, so back to my screen now. Okay, so as I was saying, social justice, although this is about economics, this is about social welfare, distribution of, you know, national economic development over 17,000 islands. We can apply the same principle in education, which is social justice for everyone across Indonesia. So what it means, so how do we respond? We respond to the diversity, a lot of which is invisible in our classroom. From one size fits all to differentiated curriculum instruction, which means we have to teach differently, we have to assess differently, matching what is offered through the curriculum to what is needed, and considering the stage of learning. So learners' readiness, not everyone is of the same mental, intellectual preparedness, even if they are of the same age. So these are some, and I will show some of the ways in which we can do this, okay? So different approaches, but the goal is the same. Remember, as I said, the input is different. Remember the boxes where the people are standing? The input is different, but the output has to be the same. We are not compromising output for anyone. And two ways of doing this. One is flexible grouping. And I put in the Bahasa terms here. Thank you, Raya, for helping me with this. And flexible assessment as well. So we don't want to treat all the learners the same because they are not the same, all right? Again, I'll give some examples as well. I'm sorry, I'm talking too fast because I think Absharini will stop me in about 7-8 minutes, right? You will throw me out, so I have to be very careful. I don't have much time. Okay, let's see how we go. So grouping and being grouped. So think about the way we do our activities in the EFL classroom based on our homogeneous idea of everyone being the same. If you group certain peoples in a particular way, if you group 5 students in a particular way, or 6 students, you know, like 3 strong students with 3 weak students together, okay? Do you think some students benefit, some students are advantaged, but at the same time, some students might be disadvantaged? Is it possible? So this is one question. I'll give you examples of that. And is homogeneous grouping even possible? Is there a typical learner? So homogeneous grouping means all groups are the same. Remember, equality, not equity. Equality means everyone's the same, okay? Is it even possible to say, I have a typical learner and most of my learners are like this? I don't think so. Maybe they are in the same age group, but there are a lot of invisible differences that make them very, very different. So take a look at this photo. This is my classroom at Monash University. What do you think, guys? Big classroom, right? I'm asking you to come and study at Monash University, and I'll see you in my classroom, in one of these rooms like this. Okay, so this is a TESOL classroom, and most students in a TESOL classroom are typically international students. In fact, in this particular class, all students are from outside Australia. They're international students. So in the next photo, in the next picture, I will show you something interesting, but I won't tell you what is interesting. I want you to tell me what is interesting. So this is what we'll see in the next picture. In the last class, in the last day of the semester, we usually take a group photo. Just everyone standing together, we take selfies, but we also take a group photo. So we took a group photo, and when we took the group photo afterwards, when I looked at the photo, I realized something very interesting happened in that photo. So I want you to look at that and tell me if you can see anything interesting. No. Someone has shared it screen again. Absharini.
Yes, sir.
You have to stop Windows 10 from sharing the screen. Someone is doing that again and again. Can you stop that?
Yes, I'm trying.
Okay.
Tell it to the host.
No, it's still there. Okay. So back to my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen now, everyone? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as I
Yes.
said, something interesting is happening in this group photo. These are all international students. Can you see some Indonesian students as well, possibly from their clothes?
Yes.
Yes, all of them. So what do you see anything interesting here? Anyone?
It's very diverse. There are some Chinese, Malay, Indonesian,
Yes.
you.
That's right. Yeah. So that's right, Raya. So interesting. The thing that is interesting, as you say, there are students from different countries. But if you look closer, you will see that all the Indonesians are together, standing together. There is no one here. There's no one here. All Indonesians are together. So we are talking about cultural diversity. Remember, that's the topic today. I'm trying to make a point here. They are all together. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. They're very lovely, lovely students. They're very nice. I don't mind it, but I didn't tell them to stand there. They all decided to stand there. So all Indonesian students together, all Vietnamese students together, and all Chinese students together. And my one Iranian student, Fateme, she is right in the middle. She has no one to stand with because there's no one else from Iran. Okay. So it is interesting because I didn't tell them to stand in a particular way, but they all chose to stand and pose for the photo in this way, which I realized only later. My question to you is, why is this happening? Think about the topic of today's presentation. Why is this happening?
Because we're gonna feel connected and we stay with the whole destination.
That's right, Leila. And why else do you think they're all standing together?
I think
from their own countries. Sean?
I think it is like a concept of in-group and out-group. So basically people that have same background will tend to stand together as an in-group people. I think that's the concept.
Yes, Sean, thank you. And that is the theory from Tajfel, in-group and out-group. Now, there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong if, you stand with people from your own countries. That's not a problem. But from the point of view of the educator, from the point of view of the lecturer, the teacher, it might be a problem, pedagogical problem. What is that?
They don't want to be together with others.
Sorry?
They don't want to be together with others.
Yeah, but why is there a problem? From the pedagogical point of view.
They don't want to have something different.
Yes, Dewi, that's actually right. So not wanting to have something different means they want to have that cultural familiarity of talking in their own language, having the same
Yes.
ethnocentric or culturally relativist ideas. Remember, I talked about ethnocentrism and all of that. So shared understanding and feeling, right? Okay.
Yep.
Now, talking in your first language, or as we said, translanguaging or code switching in a foreign language classroom is not a problem. There are a lot of studies that have said it's actually good, it's not bad. So that is not a problem. The problem is by choosing to be grouped with people from their own shared cultures, they are compromising the challenge, the high challenge that is required for learning. So if I talk about the theories of Vygotsky talks about the zone of proximal development, which means in order for learning to happen, what you're learning has to be a bit difficult. If it is too comfortable, then you don't learn. So by grouping together, they are compromising, they're making things easier, more comfortable. And that's why they are not learning as much as they could learn if the challenge was enhanced by diversifying the sitting with people from other languages and cultures. Okay, all right. So think about 4 classrooms. This is one classroom where it's a high challenge classroom. So the topic is difficult, but the teacher is not helping a lot. Okay, and another classroom where it's a low challenge classroom. Okay, so the topic is easy and the teacher isn't helping much either. And think about 2 other classrooms where you have high support from the teacher, but in one classroom, there is a lot of challenge, and the other, there is little challenge. Which classroom do you think you would like to be the most? If you are in this classroom, this one here, low challenge, low support, easy tasks, no support from teacher. This is the zone of boredom, boring classroom, okay?
Yeah.
This one here, if you're in low challenge but high support, so easy tasks, but the teacher is very supportive, zone of comfort, you're very, very comfortable. The teacher is very popular, very, very popular. If you're, can you see my pointer, by the way, guys? Can you see my pointer? Okay, yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
If you're here in this one, high challenge, low support, zone of frustration. If you're here, high challenge, high support, so the tasks are difficult, but the teacher is supporting a lot. This is what Vygotsky calls zone of proximal development. This is where learning happens the best, okay? Not by being easy and not by having less scaffolding, okay? We need this. If we go back to this, they are trying to be comfortable. Look at how they sit together. They sit with people from their own countries, okay? So they are creating a zone of comfort by being with people from the same cultural background. So this is zone of comfort. They are not learning. We want to push them here. And one way of doing that is to diversify groups. So just take a look. This is what I just explained. I'm going to share the PowerPoint with Absharini and Loli, and it can be shared with the other participants. So don't worry if you can't follow everything. Absharini, can you give me 5 minutes?
Yes,
More?
sure.
You promise
I can
you
give
won't
you
come more?
for about 7 or 8 minutes more.
That's fantastic. I'll try to finish. I'm really sorry it's taking long. But this is one way of looking at how we can create, how we can make cultural diversity in our classroom, in EFL classrooms, a strength or an advantage so that we can actually use that, exploit that to optimize our teaching so that the students can receive equitable education, not equal education, equitable education. And that is by recognizing the invisible differences that we have from one learner to another learner. And I'll show you some of these invisible differences. You know, I'm not talking about ethnicity. I'm not talking about Bahasa Gaul, your first language, ethnic language. I'm talking about behavioral invisible differences. So this is what I just explained. I'll just skip it because I don't have much time, but we are trying to push the learners here, not here. Because if all Indonesian students sit together, okay, they are here, they are comfortable. We want to make them a bit uncomfortable. We want to make the challenge higher so that they can learn higher. If things are too easy, we don't learn. That's not just for the EFL classroom. That is for life in general. If things are too easy, we don't learn. Okay, so from typical to atypical, okay? Typical Indonesian student, think about your Indonesian student, age group, gender, ethnicity. There are many, many differences. There are many, many factors that make us very different. And I'll talk about only two: multiple intelligences and learning styles. So here's the first one. Howard Gardner talks about the multiple intelligence theory. And he talks about everyone has a different type of intelligence. Some of us are good with mathematics. Some of us are good with, playing music. Some of us are really good with, social skills. Others are good athletically. Others are good with language, things like that. So these are different forms of intelligence. This is one kind of invisible intelligence that we don't see, but it is there. And then we have learning styles. There are three types of learning styles. Think about it. And I think you know about this already, okay? Some of us can learn better by seeing things. So it could be a video. Some of us are better with our hearing. So you can close your eyes and your lecturer might think you're not paying attention. You might be sitting in the last bench of the class at the end of the class and your eyes are closed and your lecturer might think you're not paying attention, but maybe you are more attentive than others because you are an auditory learner. And in order for you to learn and concentrate, you need to close your eyes, sit at the back, and look like you're not paying attention, but you're actually learning much better than others. You don't know that. Tactile learners are those who are more physical, etc. So here is an interesting thing. There is a research we had about 10 years ago, which showed that 65% of learners are visual and 10% are auditory, right? However, 80% of the way we teach in the EFL classroom is delivered orally, which means only these people will benefit from it, only 10%. What about the rest 90%? They are visual. So oral delivery might not help them. So we need to keep that in mind. This is one invisible difference we don't see. So differentiation is treating students differently. And what it says here is that it consists of the efforts of teachers to respond to variance among learners, variance, to recognize cultural diversity beyond the visible, to look at what is invisible. And this is how we probably say it in Bahasa, respecting differences, which is again the spirit of Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. So it's already there, but we have to do it in practice. I was in UNP 2 years ago, and I was told that the Musyawarah Guru Mata Pelajaran (MGMP) in Padang, they created the LKS Lembar Kerja Siswa, which was based on the Minangkabau philosophy. So I asked them, what about those who are non-Minangkabau? And they have to study the same LKS. What about them? Are we respecting the differences, or are we just looking at the dominant group? And we are not treating those who are different with the same amount of respect that we are treating the dominant group, okay? So multiple intelligence theory means that we have to recognize everyone has strengths. If someone is not doing well in a written test in your classroom, think about your student. Is it because they are learning less? They are not learning well. They are lazy. They don't work hard. Or is it because they are not good at writing? But if you ask them to do an oral presentation, they might actually do much better, because writing is not their thing. Writing is only one way of testing. There are many ways of testing. So maybe you need to differentiate your assessment. And we should focus on the strength, not on the weakness. Assessment should focus on what learners know, not on trying to find out what learners do not know. So we have two types of assessment. I won't explain this because I don't have much time. So I'll just skip this part here. I'll just skip this as well. Maybe I'll skip this as well, Absharini. I don't have much time, but I would ask all of you to Google something called big fish, little pond effect, okay? Which is, let me explain very quickly. If you have a pond where most of the fishes are small, and there is one fish that is big, what happens is the big fish will think that it is much bigger than it actually is because every other fish is smaller than it, right? And because of that, they will actually do much better. The big fish will do much better if it knows it's the biggest. On the other hand, if there is a small fish in a pond where most fishes are big, it will do even poorer. It won't do well because it will think that I am not as big as most other fishes around me. And this is called academic self-concept. So in terms of EFL classes, what does it mean? Big fish, little pond effect. In a group, if you have 3 poor students and 1 very good student, who will benefit from it? The good student will benefit from it. Big fish, little pond effect. Because the big fish, the good student will think it is a shark. It's bigger than it actually is. What about the poor student? So we have to differentiate not based on skills, not based on our perception of who is good and who is bad, but based on the 2 things that I mentioned, learning styles and multiple intelligences. Okay, and these are some of the benefits of differentiating students based on multiple intelligences and learning styles rather than first language or whatever it is. So we're talking about invisible differences that are a big part of cultural diversity. And that brings me to the last slide. And I would like to thank you all and finish my presentation with the motto at Monash University. At Monash, we say Ancora Imparo, and it means Saya masih belajar, I'm still learning. These are my contact details, and the bottom is my social media, so you can add me if you want to, but it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much, Absharini, and I'm sorry I took too much time. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome, sir. Okay. I think that I get all of us get lots of knowledge. Start from the equality and equity, from the curriculum to the end zone of proximal developments. Now we move to our next speaker. We invite Dr. Melian Melanie to present the materials. The floor is yours, Miss.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before I start this presentation, let me first address the Dean of the Faculty of Teachers Training, Ms. Zulfani Sesmiarni, and then Head of English Department, Ms. Loli Shafitri, and especially to our keynote speaker, Mr. Rakib Shodi from Monash University, Australia, who are already willing to share some of the important knowledge in our today's webinar, and also to students, lecturers, and all participants of this webinar. Well, we have already listened to and learned a lot of material related to cultural diversity and students' learning needs from the previous speaker. And here I am going to again focus on students' learning needs because I think as teacher, it is important for us to be able to understand what our students need and what their preferences in learnings are in order to be able to help them learn better. In this case, I am going to highlight that students are different. Our students are different. They are different in terms of their linguistic capacity, learners level, their ethnic and cultural, religious, and attitude differences. So we need to understand that our students are different. And because we already understand that our students are different, later all decisions related to how the learning process are going to take place is going to be based on what the students need and what their preferences are. So starting from process is going to take place, all those things are done with considering what our students' needs and what our students' preferences are. Well, the first differences on our students related to linguistic and learners level diversity, the two terms has become more popular in making decisions on learning as compared to ethnic, culture, religious, and attitude diversity. What we mean by ethnic and cultural diversity here is what I mean by ethnic and cultural diversity here is that our students who are learning English has different cultural background as compared to the culture of the target language that they learn. So a lot of materials are now focusing on the target language culture, and without much regard that the one who is going to learn the target language comes from different on understanding the target language culture. Therefore, sometimes the students' cultural background is neglected. And there is a study here proved that background is used in the teaching process, in the material, students are going to have a better language learning ability. So it means that when the material or the process of teaching, the learner or the students are going to be more engaged, they are going to be more motivated, they are going to feel that learning is not that far away from their environment, they are going to have a more improved learning ability. So is religious diversity. So when we talk about students in English department at IAIN Bukittinggi, most of the students that speak English here are Muslims. And it seems that if things related to Muslims are included into the teaching material, included into the topic of discussion, or included into the classroom activities, they are going to be more motivated and more engaged in the learning process. So it is the same with the case of cultural diversity that was explained before. So here English is taught to Muslim students, but the problem is not all, or let's say that some course books are sometimes relevant to Muslim students. And the course book that we are using here in English departments are usually published from English-speaking countries. And it is, how can I say it? It is the focus of material that are found on those course books do not really seem to be related to our students' condition that are mostly Muslim. And we can also say that as a teacher here, we can say that we have limited resources of English materials that that cater the language, the religious diversity that we have here in IAIN Bukittinggi. So what are we going to do as teachers? We teachers are encouraged to make use of cultural relevant material in English to help students develop their comprehension of learning materials. So we may use the course book that are originally created or designed in English-speaking country, but we can make some kind of adjustment by relating some topics to our students' culture. And not only being able to relate materials in teaching English with our students' culture, we can also design classroom activities with cultural and religious-based topic. So
Miss Melian Melani, are you there? Your voice? It seems that we've got troubles. Miss Meme, can you hear me?
okay, Ms. Rini, can I continue?
Yes, 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 yes. I do really sorry for all of us for this trouble.
Okay, I'm sorry. I hope I can continue. Can everybody
Yes.
listen to me?
Yes, yes, but I can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you
All
very
right.
much. Well, and then what can we do as teachers beside beside the two things that I have mentioned previously? We as teacher can also use technology for teaching culture. The technology that I am going to introduce here maybe is something that is new, not new to everyone, but maybe we should
Miss Meme, are you here with us? I can see your slide, but I cannot hear your voice. Yeah, it seems that there are troubles related to the signal, maybe, from Miss Meme, Miss Melian Melani. Okay, Miss Meme, have you joined? Are you with us?
oh, yeah, okay. Sorry.
All right.
So here, the teacher encouraged students to share stories about their own culture, and they are using the tools that is called Microsoft Movie Maker or Photo Story 3. And the way how to use this program can be seen in this YouTube link. So this kind of tool is very effective, I think, to encourage students to share about their own culture, as well as improving them, or as well as helping them to improve their language. And in this case, students are encouraged to be creative storytellers through the traditional process of selecting topic, conducting some research, writing script, and developing interesting stories. And then, besides sharing stories, students can also insert some various type of multimedia into their digital story. They can insert some music and then some text or some video clips. So it's going to be interesting. And they can also play their story on a computer, and then they can also share it on web, or they can distribute it on a CD and then share it to their friends or whoever that thinks it is interesting, or whoever needs it. And this kind of activity in incorporating audio and visuals in classroom, it has been stressed with the audio visual method. So it is closely related to that kind of teaching method. And by using this digital storytelling, means that we put the center of material development process along with the motivation that they bring. And this kind of digital story give the members of culturally diverse classroom to share and reflect their culture in class. So if it's impossible for us as teacher to cater to all cultural differences that our students have in the classroom, maybe this can be one of the solution where all students can share their own culture. And apart from storytelling, here I can also share some free online language learning website. Maybe some of you are already familiar with this, but I think it is also important that we teachers let our students explore this site, because by exploring these sites, they are able to choose what kind of learning materials that suits their need and that suits their learning preferences. And these are some free online learning website. The first one is Elo. This one is, I think, is very special. It can cater to diversity, culture diversity, because in these sites we can find listening materials from students who are learning English all over the world. So they are sharing their experience as students who are learning English based on their own culture. I mean, based on their own experience in their own country home. So I think a lot of us can get benefit from it on how people from different countries learn English. So I think this is quite useful for our students. And then learning English, VON use. This is quite similar too, but something that is special about this site is that they can choose. Students can choose what kind of news that they think is suitable with their level of English proficiency. So when they are beginners, they can choose news for beginners. When they are already classified as advanced students, they can choose news in that level. So what is interesting about this site is students can choose news based on their level of English proficiency. And maybe I don't have to go one by one about this online language learning website. Later, you can just we can just share this. But the point is, all these sites offer opportunity for our students to learn a language in accordance to their own needs and their own learning preferences. So they are free to choose whatever topic that they like regarding whether it is based on culture or based on the topic that they like. And also they can choose what materials that are suitable with their language proficiency. So I think it's going to be very beneficial for all our students. Maybe I think that's all what I can share with us today, Miss Rini. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome, Miss. Thank you so much for sharing this free online language learning. Thanks a lot. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our last speaker, Mr. Irwandi. Have you here, Mr. Irwandi? Okay, for the next and for the last, before we come to the question and answer sessions, we invite Mr. Irwandi to present materials for all of us here. Mr. Irwandi, the floor is yours. Mr. Irwandi, are you here with us?
Okay, Borani.
All right. We cannot hear your voice, sir.
Do you hear my voice? Do you listen to my voice?
Oh, it's not really clear enough.
Okay.
But I can see your screen.
Okay, we can start.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you
Sure, sir.
listen to?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's start.
Mr. Irwandi, I think that we cannot hear your voice clearly.
Let's try. Rini, do you listen to me?
Yes, but it's not really clear.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. So now, thank you very much for Mr. Rajib, Bu Melian Melani, and Bu Loli, and all participants. Now we are going to talk about the diversity, cultural diversity in English foreign language learning. Okay, is that right? Okay. One of the points that I want to share here is about how we explore universal moral values in the cultural diversity, and how we integrate these moral values in English foreign language learning, especially in social linguistics. Okay. You see that my
We cannot see your slide, sir. Can you open your slide?
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Never mind.
Try to find it.
If it is possible for us to see you in the video, sir.
Okay. Okay. Is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear now. But we cannot see your face.
Okay. Yeah, we have discussed in general points, I think, and I get inspiring ideas from Mr. Raji, from Meme just now, and from Ms. Loli. So I would like to focus on sociolinguistic learning materials. Why? Because we know that in the cultural diversity, actually, we can explore what we call universal moral values. Okay, and we cannot ignore this aspect, because talking about culture, okay, it can't be separated from talking about moral values. And I want to choose how to integrate these moral values, especially in one of the subjects in English learning materials. It is sociolinguistics. Okay. What is universal moral value, we know that as I have told just now, that in the cultural diversity we can explore universal moral value. So universal moral values, actually it refers to the same value, okay, the same moral value which is recognized, which is accepted by almost people in the world. Okay, for instance, love and compassion, okay, and peace and justice. Okay, love and compassion, such as respect to human rights. Okay, peace and justice, such as tolerance. Okay, cooperation and social responsibility, and also about global spirituality. Okay, such as how we respect to the secret source. It is global spirituality and other moral and ethical values. And why we choose universal moral values? Okay, the first, we have to establish a successful dialogue among cultures. You know, even though we live in different cultures, actually we can get the same moral values. That all people recognize these moral values. And the second point, the second reason is how we anticipate intercultural clashes and discrepancy. Okay, and the next is understanding moral values among the different cultures. It is important element in career and education. Okay, it is interesting when Mr. Rajit has showed the pictures in the class. Okay, why the Indonesian students stand in the same community, because it is influenced by the moral values. Okay, their attitude is controlled by moral value. Okay, the next is why I choose sociolinguistics. Okay, there are some reasons to choose sociolinguistics as one of the subjects that can be used, that can be employed to practice moral values. The first is, we know that the cooperation, communication, and kindness as the basic means of human interaction. And we, the students, okay, students learn these points in sociolinguistics. The second one is sociolinguistics concerns on the phenomena of language diversity. So when the students learn about the language diversity, they must also learn about, in the diversity of language, there are some moral values, some universal moral values that people can recognize, that people can accept these moral values. The next is, in sociolinguistics, students learn about how language is used in the society. So we must know the use of the language in society must be tied to the moral values. We know that hoax, the case of hoax, no, it is caused since the use of language is not tied by the moral values. And the last reason, okay, learning sociolinguistics is not just to learn about how language is used in the community, but also it is also to transmit the humanism values to the learners. It is, okay, these become the reasons why we can integrate universal moral values in sociolinguistics learning materials. And yeah, the key concepts of sociolinguistics, okay, the first is about the phenomena of language diversity. Next, the growth and diversification of languages and change in phonological and syntactical rules. But we focus on the phenomena of language diversity. Okay, once more, learning sociolinguistics is not just to learn about the phenomena of language diversity. It is not just to discuss how language is used in society, but it can't be separated from the moral values that can be used to control how people use the language in society. And what about intercultural communication? I use this become the perspective my people now. You know, intercultural communication is a communication between at least two people from different cultures. And okay, there is the domains of intercultural differences, such as verbal domains, organization of messages, and non-verbal domains. All people in the world are different in these domains. Okay, how to choose the words. Okay, it is the domain of verbal, and how to organize the message, and about non-verbal domains. All people in the world are different in these domains, but they have the same moral values. Okay, that is, I think, that the most important point that we can explore in this discussion. Next, the implication for intercultural communication is all communication between people is essentially intercultural. Because why? Because we have different culture in communication, and different types of cultures shape communication. But there is the ideal condition, especially in learning sociolinguistics. Okay, the learning materials of sociolinguistics ideally should be connected, should be integrated with the universal moral values. So the integration between the learning materials of sociolinguistics and the universal moral values, it will it will bear a new knowledge on the universal moral values and their relevance for the learning materials of sociolinguistics. And yeah, how to integrate them, I have the idea we can share in this discussion. The first is analyzing. We, or the teachers or the lecturers, can analyze the goals and objectives of the learning materials of sociolinguistics, such as when the students learn about dialect and about ethnicity. So the first is analyzing. Okay, we analyze the goals and objectives of the learning materials of sociolinguistics. The second step is exploring. We explore the moral message in the learning materials. When students learn about ethnicity, when the students learn about dialect, once more, actually, they do not only learn about language is used in society, but we can explore the moral message in such learning materials. Next, coding. What I mean with coding? Okay, we code the learning materials that have the potency of moral values. And the last is integrating. Okay, we integrate the learning materials with the moral values. Let's take the example. This is one of the examples, such as code switching. Okay, regional and social dialect, ethnicity and social networks. Okay, these are the examples of learning materials in sociolinguistics. For instance, when the students learn about code switching, actually, the students do not only learn how the phenomena of code switching in society, and also the reason for code switching, but they must be taught about the moral values. One of them is empathy. What is empathy? You know that empathy, we can consider our friends' feeling. For instance, when we want to switch our language into another language that our partner, that our friend doesn't understand such language, we must tell our friend first, excuse me, I want to talk with my friends from English, so I must speak in English. Okay, we tell it our friends who cannot speak English. It is empathy. Because why? It is to keep their feeling. Okay, and also in code switching, there is cooperation, the value of cooperation. Okay, we want to switch our language because we want to cooperate with another people. Okay, this is one of the value how we incorporate the universal moral values in the learning material of sociolinguistics. And also when we teach regional and social dialect, we can integrate the values such as equality and also equity and also unity in diversity. And also in ethnicity and social networks, there is also the values such as respect for human rights and cooperation. I think that although Rini, Mrs. Rini, that is just, you know, that a preliminary opinion about how we can explore moral values in the diversity of culture, because discussing the diversity of culture is also to discuss the moral values, especially universal moral values in the different culture. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Irwandi. Give applause, please, for all the speakers who presents the materials. All right. After all the speakers give and share, there are some questions addressed to our speakers. Start from question for Miss Loli, Dr. Rosik, and Miss Me and Dr. Irwandi. So maybe we can start from Miss Loli first. Miss Loli, are you here? Miss Loli, are you here? Are you with us?
Okay, yes, I'm here, Miss Rini, but I'm sorry that is terrible here. Okay, questions.
There's a question for you. There's a
Okay.
Question
Question
from
from
Zona Tanjung.
Farina Donatanjung. Okay. Thank you for the question, Farina Donatanjung. So your question is how to incorporate cultures into English teaching, mainly in virtual teaching, as we know that students must have an experience of feeling, touching, reading, and writing. Okay. As I told before that how to incorporate culture into English foreign language classroom, I have told that in order to communicate effectively in the target language, foreign language students should be facilitated to feel, to touch, to smell, and see the foreign peoples, and not just to hear the language. To achieve that goals, cultural activities and objectives should be carefully organized and incorporated into the lesson plans to enrich and inform the teaching contents. So as I told before, that there are various material and techniques for presenting cultures in the classroom that are well recommended. I just take 4. So such as one of them is authentic materials. So I think that using authentic materials when teach and learns English as a foreign language is one way to help the students to engage in their authentic cultural experiences. Teachers can adapt their use of authentic material to suit the age, the language proficiency level of the students, and also the condition of the student. Such as today that we know that all the world experience, or we get the pandemic condition that even that we have to work at home, to study at home. And I think that when the teacher use the virtual teaching to teach the students. So I think that teacher can adapt or adopt many kinds of authentic material that can be used for the students in learning the language. So one of them is authentic material, I think. So it's one way to incorporate culture into the EFL classroom, even in the virtual teaching and learning process, I think. Okay, I think that's all for me. I hope that it will be answer the question from Farina Tanju. Is there any questions, Ms. Randy? It's only one question for me.
Okay, thank you, Miss Loli. Okay, now we move to the next questions from Fatana Soraya, Miss Raya, for Dr. Rakit, related to Campus Merdeka. Uh, what do you think if low level ability of students are faced with these kinds of situations when they have to go out to the other when they have to go to the other faculty outside of their university, and low students are getting less support in their exchange, and as an educator, what can we do to face this challenge? Dr. Rakit.
Thank you, Absharini, and thank you, Raya, for the good question. I've actually answered that on chat box already, Raya, but that's all right. This is for everyone, just so that everyone can just listen to me. I know about the Campus Merdeka program, and I think it's a great initiative taken by the government. I think we need to be, as educators, as English language teachers, we need to be careful not to label our students high achieving or low achieving, or successful, unsuccessful, or great and poor. This kind of binary is not helpful, because when we do that, there are two problems. One is we base on the results of summative assessment tests in order to label someone as high achieving and low achieving. That's one problem. Summative assessment tests are not complete, and in many ways they do not capture the actual strengths of the students, including their learning capacity. The second problem with labeling students as poor and strong is that it gives the students a sense of their cognitive development being fixed. So if someone is placed in a group, in a particular group for a group activity, classroom activity, and if they know that they have been paired with a smarter student in the same group to achieve balance, and if we keep on grouping them in the same way all the time with two strong students, two weak students, two strong students, two weak students, if we keep on doing that, they will have the belief that they are not developing. They are being grouped in that way because they need to be balanced by someone smarter than them. So these are the two problems. So what I suggested in response to Raya's very good question is that those so-called weak students can only benefit from any kind of policy reform of government initiative or Campus Merdeka or any kind of problem only when we as educators make sure that we do not see their development as static. If we stop labeling them based on summative assessment tests, like the grades they get in exams, and if we differentiate them instead based on their learning styles, preferences, readiness, and the multiple intelligences that they have. And as I said, according to multiple intelligences, all students are strong, all students have strength, and our focus should be on their strength, not on their weaknesses. And if we do that, then we are not seeing students as weak, but we are seeing students as having different kinds of learning styles and abilities rather than weak. So that's how I would answer the question. So in other words, it's our responsibility to do that, not the policymakers, because in Indonesia, as in many other countries, and in Australia as well, policymakers see the thing in a top-down manner. So they tell us what to do. But we are the ones, as English teachers, we are the ones in the classroom. So it's for us to differentiate our students based on our knowledge of how students are varied. And as I said, cultural diversity is much more than visible differences. We are talking about invisible differences, such as learning styles and multiple intelligence. It's a very good question. Thank you.
Okay, but actually, we still have two more questions here for you. If we talk about diverse backgrounds of students, the students have a different cultural background. So, how we can manage an effective classroom management while considering their different background?
Yeah, Absharini, it's a very difficult thing to do, isn't it? Especially if you have 30 or 40 students in a small classroom, then it's not possible practically for us to treat 30 students in 30 different ways, right? Because our time is limited, our space is limited, our resources are limited. So we can't do that, right? So differentiated instruction doesn't mean treating everyone differently. It just means recognizing and acknowledging that if I give a particular assessment task to 30 students, those who get the highest mark in a written test are not the ones who have learned the best. They might be getting the highest mark because they are good at writing or they can write very fast. And someone not getting the highest score might be not because they haven't learned a lot, they haven't got a high score, they've got a low score, not because of their learning, but because they write slowly, or they are not good at writing, but writing is only one way of manifesting their learning, okay? Maybe they can show their learning in a different way, such as a portfolio, such as an oral presentation, maybe multiple choice, maybe creative questions, maybe a log or a journal. Now, I know that we are limited by the curriculum and the rules that we have at schools and different policies. So I know that we can't just differentiate assessment as much as we want to. Theoretically, it's a good thing, but we don't want to lose our job. We don't want to do anything that is dramatically different. So keeping in mind that we have limitations with resources and time and space and the number of students and the fear of losing our jobs or trying to abide by the rules of the school, within that, what we can do is we can differentiate assessment by introducing more formative assessment and relying less on summative assessment. Now, I think most of you know that summative means formal, structured, the ones that you know, the quantifiable one where you actually put as grade, you give a grade. Whereas formative is informal, ongoing. So summative is assessment of learning. Formative is assessment for learning. So with the limitations that we have, we can increase formative assessment and rely less on summative assessment. That is one suggestion, but I know it is difficult. There is no magic solution, but we can base our pedagogical practices on some of these things, right?
Okay, so I think in order to make an effective classroom management, it's not only about us as a teachers, but also by considering how to assess the students later, take more formative rather than summative. That's one of the way to help this one. Okay. All right. There is still one last question for you, sir, from one of my students, Leila. She asked you about how do we as a teachers help students whose intelligence is not in linguistic to introduce their English ability at class?
I think I answered Leila's question as well on chat. So I was typing all the time, so it's already there.
All right, okay.
But that's okay. Just very quickly. So see what kind of, so the 8 types of multiple intelligences that we have according to Howard Gardner, we need psychometric tests in order to evaluate what kind of intelligence is predominant among us. And as English teachers, we can't do that in the classroom. We need to be a psychologist. So it is not our job to determine whether someone is more mathematically inclined or musically inclined or kinesthetically inclined, etc. We can't do that. However, what we can do is we can try to look at the learning styles. I think that is more important. So visual, kinesthetic, auditory learners. And we can diversify the types of resources that we are using in our classroom. So for example, Dr. Melani's presentation on the website, I think that is a wonderful way of engaging kinesthetic learners and visual learners to look at some of the alternative ways of learning rather than paper-based books and physical classroom activities. So diversifying assessment materials and approaches will help us respond to the needs of those who have a different predominant multiple intelligence, rather than the one that we assume everyone has in common, because everyone is different, right? So maybe in that way. It's a very good question from Lela. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, now we have a questions for Dr. Melanie and Mr. Irwandi. Questions from Hesti Wahyuni. Miss Melanie, are you here?
Okay. Yeah, Miss
Yeah.
Irini.
Okay.
So maybe what I can say here is it's not much different from what has been explained by our keynote speaker, Dr. Rakib, that it's impossible for us to be able to cater to all differences that our students have in the classroom. It is kind of impossible for us to adjust our teaching in accordance to different needs of the students. But actually, what we can do is to respond if it, in terms of assessment, if in terms of assessment, because this is what one of the most important part of teaching, we can vary the form of assessment technique that we give to the students. So, for example, in my listening class, I am not only focusing on final semester tests as the total in the total score for for this subject, but I also give students a kind of assessment where they have to listen to different listening material every week, and then they make a journal, a listening journal, and then by doing this kind of activities, I cater to students who are not able to do well on their final semester tests or on the writing on writing assessment. And I am also asking students to make some kind of video, like the storytelling one. It is also as a means of giving support to those who are good at, who are very creative, who are good at making, telling stories, or who are good at creating videos and then inserting some clips or other kind of things that are dealing with this kind of problem in order to cater for that student's need. So maybe that's what I can say, but still it's impossible for us. I think I do agree with Dr. Rakib that it's going to be very impossible for us as teacher to cater to all different.
Right, Miss Meme.
Thank you, Miss Rini.
All right. Thank you, Miss Meme. Okay, maybe we can move to Mr. Irwandi. What do you think, Mr. Irwandi? Are you here?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's one question for you. As a lecturer, how you see the diversity in English language teaching, especially when you see your diverse students, they have a different background knowledge, and how do you see it as a lecturer in English language teaching?
Okay, I think that's diversity in English language teaching. We can classify what kinds of diversity. The first is cultural diversity. Okay, in cultural diversity, we cannot, okay, we can't blame. There is good, there is bad based on our perspective, but we can teach the students about the culture itself, and then, okay, to judge it is good and it is bad, it is based on the moral value. Once more, the value that students have, okay, our value will lead us to consider, to decide something, actually, okay, include in the phenomena of cultural diversity, our value. For me, okay, for instance, kissing. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, okay, about kissing. Okay, in Islam, if our value is based on the Islamic teaching, for instance, okay, it is bad for, okay, for kissing, not for what you call it, mahram, okay, in Islam, okay. So to decide that it's good and that it's bad, it is based on our value. But we must know the culture, because, okay, through understanding the cultures, we can understand the people's perspective based on our cultural perspective. Okay, And also the diversity in English language teaching is based on the diversity in case of, the intellectual and also academic background. And I think Mr. Rajib has answered this case, but I just focus on the diversity in culture, especially in learning English language. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Randi. Okay, at the end, maybe I would like to make a short conclusion from me myself that when we discuss about cultural diversity, it means that we need to consider students' background, whether it is about their background knowledge, about their background culture, about their background needs, and so on. So at the end, before we create, let's say, before we create English language teaching, we need to consider what our students really need in classroom. By considering the equality and equity stated by Mr. Kouri, stated by Ms. Loli for that, when we teach language, don't forget that we also involve culture inside teaching the language itself. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I think it is the end of our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Big thanks for Mr. Rakib from Australia for joining us. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you for all the speakers, Dr. Melian Melanie, Ms. Loli, and Mr. Irwandi, for sharing the knowledge here. And for all the participants, thanks a lot for joining us here. I hope that we can meet in another webinar soon.
Sharini,
for the
can I just say something as an outsider? Can I just say something very quickly? I just wanted to say I really enjoyed it. I'd like to thank you, Sharini, once again, and Gusti and Loli and my fellow co-presenters, Dr. Melanie and Mr. Irwandi. I really enjoyed your presentations. I learned a lot from it, and I look forward to returning to Bukittinggi once again. I think there's a Lembah Anai on the way, which I really love. So I'll stop there and I'll come to see you sometime soon. I look forward to seeing you in Bukittinggi or in Padang or somewhere in Minangkabau very soon. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm grateful for you to have invited me and look forward to being in touch. Once again, I'll share my PowerPoint with all of you. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of us. For the certificate for the participants, later we will send it to your email. So thank you for joining us. I hope we will meet it. We will meet in the next webinar soon.
Miss Rini, can I say something?
Yes, for sure. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Rakib, for sharing the knowledge with us. We really learn a lot from what you have already explained, and we will be looking forward to see you here in Bukittinggi, and we will be at your service. Thank you.
Yes. The last Miss Loli, maybe? Would you like to say something?
We will waiting for you in Bukittinggi, Mr. Rakib. Thank you.
Mr. Irwandi, your last?
Okay, Mr. Ragib, Mr. Afrianto, regat salam for you because he was my roommate.
Oh, okay. Walaikum assalam to Dr. Afrianto. I was his roommate. Yeah, I was his PhD supervisor at Monash. He's at Riau University, Pekanbaru. I know. And yeah, thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you as well, his roommate, right?
Yeah. Okay, we wait for you in Bukittinggi next. Thank you.
I can't wait to come back. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's all, ladies and gentlemen. We end our webinar today by saying Alhamdulillah. Good afternoon for everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Rakib. See you soon in another webinar in Bukittinggi also.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Sampai jumpa, everyone.
See you here.
Sampai jumpa.
What is this?
Okay. Thank you, Miss Rini, Miss Meme.
Thank you for all the
Irwandi.
Welcome.
All the participants and Mr.
Nah itu kok kono elek kene ne tak aku yo elek pisan wae.
Thank you for all the participants all over Indonesia. Thank you so much. We wait for a meeting soon for the next webinar. Thank you, Mr. Ali Agil. Thank you so much, Miss Raya. Miss Devi Nopita from Raja Ali Haji. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Especially for Madam Suryani. Thank you so much for having us as a host for this webinar. I'm really sorry for any mistake, error, and trouble so far.
Yes, no problem, but not maximum.
Thank you for invite us.
You're welcome.
Rini, there is a question about the certificate.
Yeah, we'll send it to the email, Miss. We will send it to the email of the participants later. Maybe we need times for about 2 or 3 days to, or at the most a week. I thought I lose my battery of my cell phone, so I leave the room now. See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for
Bye.
all.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Rini. Thanks for all. Thank you, Mr. Iswandir.
Thank you.
Mr. Thank you, Miss Suryani, as the host of this webinar.
Yes, you're welcome.